Morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending where you're situated in the world today, and welcome to another live PlaceOS product demo. My name's Jeremy. I'm the head of product here at PlaceOS, primarily looking after our product roadmap for the PlaceOS suite of products, and also managing our internal development teams that put the product together. I'm joined today by Marvin, one of our lead front-end developers, Julie, another one of our front-end developers, and also Mario is joining us from the London office today, and they'll be talking about a range of new features and updates to the PlaceOS product that have been introduced either over the last month or they're coming into the product very shortly. I think we may as well get stuck into the first demo, which will be with Julie today, looking at surveys. So surveys is a brand new feature that we've added to the PlaceOS product suite. It's a completely brand new design from the ground up. So Julie will take you through how that looks as part of the product and some of the features of that surveys, and then we can. If there's any questions from the audience, you're welcome to put them into the chat, and we can answer those. Otherwise, we can have a little bit of a question session on the surveys feature once Julie's done. So I'll hand over to you now, Julie, to lead off with the surveys.
Thanks, Jeremy. Hi, everyone. I was one of the front-end developers that worked on the survey feature in the Workplace app. And in a nutshell, this survey allows you to create a new survey and have that survey sent out to people based on an event trigger. And our app collects and analyzes data provided by the users and gives you more insight about how space is being used. So the PlaceOS system is a holistic platform that captures all types of data about spaces, and the survey feature extends that data capture to also include personal input from people that use those spaces. So this tool is quite powerful because it can help you understand why a room is being used more than others, why a space is being used a certain way, maybe in a way that wasn't intended, and also how user experience can be improved. For example, you could send a survey out every time a visitor checks in or out of a building. For example, like this one, which I'll just show you. This one's called Survey for All Visitors Checking In. And when we look at the survey, we can see you can pick questions that ask about the experience of a user with the staff, and also how well they think we went in terms of like cleanliness, convenience, and other factors that are important to your space, and also whether they were greeted on arrival by members. So when it comes to building and looking at surveys, what we decided was really important was to automate this process. So usually you might have hundreds of bookings in a building every day. And we thought that instead of creating a survey for every single meeting, you can just create one that's sent out every time a trigger is occurring. So for example, this particular survey is about every time a booking is cancelled by a user. And over here, we can select that the trigger would be cancelled. And this survey, you could just make it once and it will be sent out every single time there's a booking cancellation. So this could really help you understand why people are cancelling a meeting that they booked ahead of time, and whether they feel a certain way about that space. Like, for example, they might have cancelled due to finding another space that was more appropriate, or they might have not liked the idea of the space anymore. And our survey feature really allows you to understand fully about how your space is being used. So now I'm just going to show you how a brand new survey can be created. So you just click on the Add New Survey button once you've selected the building that it applies to, and just give the survey a new title, like all space cancellations, and select cancelled as the trigger. And in here in the question bank, we're actually showing the most commonly used questions that you've used in the past, just so you can save time. And you can search through the questions with a keyword like cancel. And now you can just drag and drop these questions across really easily. You can also add a new question from scratch with this button. So the question could be, what was your impression of the space? You can also select from a list of different types of questions depending on the type of answer you want to receive. So in this case, we might pick a comment box and add that to the question bank. And you can just drag that across now. So if you go to the preview tab, this is actually what the user will see once they receive the survey, which will they get in an email link based on this trigger. So you don't have to manually send out these survey links. It'll all be done and will be automated on the PlaceOS system based on our event triggers. So for example, the user receives this and they fill this out, found another room. And once they complete this, they'll get notified that they've completed the survey. And what we can do is actually go back and look at the statistics. So, for example, I'll look at this one from earlier. When you go to responses of that survey, what we've done is represent the responses visually, so you can read really easily what the main answer was and what the main feedback was for a question. Just show another one. So here's another example. So this gives you insight into how space is being used, just at first glance. So if you have a room that has really low utilization rates, what you can do is just run a survey to get feedback from anyone that uses that room. And you can understand why a certain space isn't really being utilized as much as others. And there are also many other uses. For example, this could be used by a facilities manager looking at furniture upgrades, and they might want to know what chairs or desks are preferred by users over others. Could also be used by the IT team to see how new video conferencing equipment is being used. And also can be used by the marketing department as a research tool. So overall, this is a really powerful tool that can give you metrics on a lot of different types of data, and it's completely customizable to your business, and it's automated by event triggers. So I think this will really change the way that businesses can maximize space usage and also improve customer experience. Just hand that back over to you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Julie. That's fantastic. And I think just following on from your point regarding the triggers, so we can obviously trigger those surveys to go out on a variety of things, whether someone cancelled the room booking or even if they completed the room booking and actually attended on the day, whether they checked into their room. But that's also not limited to rooms. We can do that for desks. We can do that for visitors. We can do that for car parks, which really showcases that the power of the integration that exists within PlaceOS. But I think on top of that, Julie, the other part is we can also target specific buildings or floors with the surveys, right?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, you can pick one specific level or all the levels of a building at the time of creating that survey.
And that might be really useful if you're considering refitting a particular floor. Maybe you're doing a technology or a furniture comparison between existing floors leading up to the refit of a specific floor, and want to get that information back from your users about which floors or rooms they like better, which floors maybe are due for an upgrade, and what features should go into those floors as well. So again, as I said, it's really nice to build on those integrations that exist within PlaceOS and let you specifically target buildings, floors, and then use any range of triggers that might exist for desk, rooms, car parking, or visitors. The other thing probably to mention on the surveys as well is that the results that you are given back from the users who complete those surveys are entirely anonymous. So your users can be confident in providing you honest opinion about their experience. There is no way to link those results back, obviously, unless you made a form or a survey that specifically asked for the user's name or email address or something. But by default, out of the box, the survey feature does not expose who that user was that provided that feedback to your survey. Thanks, Julie. Really good coverage, and it looks great. And as some of the viewers may have noticed, that forms part of our concierge offering, which is a bit of our administration side of PlaceOS for floor managers and people who look after those room bookings and desk bookings and administer those side of things. So that's where the surveys feature will slot in, and obviously the only part of that the end users will see is an email with a link to that survey, which you saw in Julie's demo there, where we could see what the survey looked like for those end users. So thanks to you, Julie. Great work by the front end team putting that together, and some of our back end team for assembling the ability to capture and report on that data as well. That's a really nice feature in PlaceOS. So next we're going to move on to Marvin, who's going to demonstrate some of the updated capabilities of our catering feature. So prior to the updates we've made to our catering, it was a little bit cumbersome to create menus. Menus were also a little bit global to a building, so it was very hard to specify a different menu for different floors, or omit specific items from certain floors. We've now improved that experience and put the administration of all of that catering functionality into our concierge platform. So I'll hand over to you, Marvin, to step through that.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Hey everyone, Marvin here, Senior Front-End Developer at PlaceOS. So today I'll be doing a quick walkthrough of some of the new features we've recently added for catering. So here I'm here at the concierge screen. So when we start with catering, we will start first by selecting the building that we want to set it up for. So I have York here selected, and coming into the catering and going into menus and prices. And this is where you can pretty much set up your entire catering items for all your catering needs. So before you set up anything, you want to make sure that you are on all levels. And this is the place where you can start, for instance, adding a new item, a food item with a certain category. You could add certain criteria, like this could be a gluten-free item, or if it contains any dairy or nuts. And you could also add like an image that you want to represent this item. And once you've added that in, it would appear here. And they are kind of that the item is slotted in. So one way is to add the items here. Now you have an alternative if you prefer to work with CSV files or Excel files, that you can import them here. We do have a template that you can download and just add onto the just follow the instructions on the template, and then you can just upload it back up here, and it will just appear in this list. So once you've added an item, you have also the option to add additional options or variations to a particular menu item. For instance, here you have the Nestle Fruit Vitals. You have different flavors. So coming into here, you could add a new option. Say I would like to add one more. There's a strawberry option. This is one of the flavor. The same unit try, save that in, and it would appear here. So this is more for items that have different variations or different flavors. And that's pretty much it for adding the menu items. So we added something here where you can configure the catering based on certain rules. So in this setup here, in this building, there is a rule here that for catering to be enabled, it has to be done 72 hours before the meeting. And we have other criteria here as well that you can add. Like maybe, for example, you only want catering to be enabled if a meeting is of a certain length, or if it's before a certain hour of the day. So that makes it very easy to set up a particular rule. And in terms of room availability here, we do now have the option for you to enable or disable catering for specific rooms. At the moment, all the rooms here are enabled. So if you would like to, say, disable catering for a couple of these rooms, just pick them and then click on the disable selected or enable regarding depending on what your needs are in the sense. And if you need to have specific charge codes added, you can add the list of charge codes here so that it's being presented as an option when the person is doing the catering order. And so once you have all your lists set up, you can then come into the specific levels and you can enable specific items for a particular level. Say, for example, maybe the meal options are not available for level 2. So you can just come into here and then just disable the items for that, for what is not available for the level 2. And with that, that's your catering setup is pretty much done. It's instant, it's live, and this is something that we've previously used to manage for you, but with these features now you have more control and more autonomy over your catering needs. And that's pretty much it from the catering updates. Back to you, Jeremy.
It's now shifting that ability to maintain the menu on a day-to-day basis as well, back to the end user, where previously that was a function that was largely done by PlaceOS on the back end. So that's a really nice addition. The other part of that as well is being able to manage cost codes, and we understand, particularly in large organizations, that there's often a requirement to have a cost code associated with meetings and catering orders, particularly. But it's often difficult to obtain that cost code data from where it resides within the organisation. So the manual method of maintaining those cost codes is now removed, and that's obviously done inside that concierge catering interface as well, as we saw as Marvin went through there as well. So this potentially starts to open up the avenue of, traditionally the catering offering has been used for visitor meetings or client meetings in select meeting rooms. Now that we can actually, specify what items are available on what floors of a building, we can actually start to enable catering potentially for staff. So you might be able to order food or coffee from your workstation and be able to either have that delivered or go and collect it from a catering point. And that can be now tightly controlled via that catering menu and concierge to ensure that only the specific items that you want people to have access to in those floors actually have access to. So very nice addition, and I think that was a good coverage of how that works together. So that as well is now live in the product. So alongside the addition of the surveys feature, those catering changes are also now live that we just saw Marvin step through in that demo there. So that's all currently available via the PlaceOS concierge for people who are running off our latest release. Thanks, Marvin. Thanks again. As I mentioned earlier, if you've got any questions as well, please feel free to put them into the chat and we can address them as we go along. But I think next we'll jump over to Mario, our international guest for today. Mario is going to be doing a little bit of a talk on the question that's on everyone's minds these days, which is understanding energy efficiency and energy analytics within your workplace environment. And this is a key area of focus for PlaceOS and particularly our roadmap moving forward. Being an integration platform, we do have a lot of potential integration points to be able to start obtaining this data and then doing something with that is meaningful and provides you some insight into your workplace environment. So I don't want to steal all your thunder, Mario. I'll hand over to you to talk about energy and analytics.
Thank you, Jeremy, and hi everyone. And sorry about my Italian accent, but I cannot really get rid of it. So this presentation is more a high-level, overview of what energy is and what we are doing in order to, achieve the contextualized, energy dashboards. And during this presentation, I want to, talk about different aspects of energy, and I want to answer to different questions. So why energy data is important, what we can collect, who are the personas we are collecting for, and how we collect the data. And all these 4 questions will bring to a broader question, which is, so what? So now that we collect all the data, what we're going to do with this data? And I also want to share with you the dashboards that we are doing currently for a project in the US. So the first question is why energy data is important. There are different reasons, and these reasons are, the built environment is the largest emitter of greenhouse gases. 40% of raw material consumption comes from the built environment, and so on and so on. But like these reasons, in my opinion, are quite boring because we keep listening, we keep hearing about these reasons over and over. And what I want to speak about today is, the real reasons energy data is important. And of course, this is my opinion. So I'm open to, more deep discussion later. But the first reason, in my opinion, why data is important is data does not have context. So what we need to do is to add context to data. Data itself is not useful. Data itself is not meaningful. So energy data will help us to understand the overall use of buildings. So not on the occupancy side, but more on the operations side. So we understand the correlation between operations and occupancy of the building. And this is because with the pandemic and also before the pandemic, we were changing the way we are using buildings. So from static, we are using buildings in a dynamic way. And HVAC systems are not made for this dynamic, reality of how we use spaces. And for instance, HVAC are made for very static schedules, such as 9 to 5 from Monday to Friday, and then setback for the weekends. And this flexibility, which is brought by this new way we use buildings, is very is critical because facility managers and people who are managing buildings are struggling to keep up on this, and we want to help them to understand energy data in order to make these buildings more efficient. And in this field, demand response control is a must. So energy data is not about how much I'm consuming now, knowing if the HVAC system is operating when a room is occupied or is empty. If it's empty, we need to do something. We need to trigger an action to turn the heating off, even though it's a Monday at 3 p.m. And energy is not just stats, it's not just numbers. So it's not just knowing we are consuming 100 kilowatt hour, but it's a story, as I said. So we need to tell the energy consumptions alongside occupancy of the space and the building. And this will help people to build strategies. And we keep speaking about net zero carbon emission that all the governments, all the countries are promising, and they are aiming towards a net zero carbon emission, country. So we want to help them to understand this data. We want to contextualize this data. So among these reasons, I want to focus more on the 3 concepts of automation, contextualization, and actions. Automation, because right nowadays we are consuming and we are generating thousands of data points, and it's very difficult to keep up, and it's very difficult to keep a manual import and a manual approach. So what we want to do in PlaceOS is to automate this process, this import process, and this contextualization process. So data points are not just points, but they are a network, so we can understand how they're related to each other, and all the correlation will just bring to actions, and these actions can be triggers, and they can be helping people to save energy. So now that we spoke about why we need to collect data, I want to speak about what we can collect. So we have 3 different scopes for energy data. We have scope 1 and scope 2 that are very related to the operations of building and direct emissions. And then we have scope 3, which are more the indirect emissions. So what we want to focus more is on the scope 1 and scope 2, which are the direct emissions from the operation of buildings. And these data, such as electricity, gas, water consumption, will allow us to build metrics such as CO2 emissions, CO2 breakdowns, CO2 offset, and energy consumption. And these metrics put all together will help us to build applications. And these applications can be emissions reports, benchmarking, anomaly detection, and so on. Now the question is, who are the personas? So who we are collecting this data for? So in my opinion, there are three main personas: the executive, the operational, and analytical. The executive, such as the C-suite, are more focused on the long-term aspect of the data, and they are focused on emission reports, net zero carbon emission strategy, and energy conservation measures. And this is because they need to plan and need to build strategies in order to achieve a better environment in the space, but also a net zero carbon emission in the future. Operational, such as facility managers, are more focused on the short term because they need to solve problems that come up immediately. So if they need to shut down the heating, they will need to know when to do it and why they are doing it. So operational scope is more for anomaly detection and monitoring. And then there are analytical personas who are more focused on building models, machine learning models, or just rule-based model, data-driven models, to help the executive personas to build these strategies. So how we can collect data? So buildings are generating data every single second. There are transactional data and analytical data, and there are smart meters, IoT sensors, BMS data who are generated every single second. So as PlaceOS, we are helping people to achieve the automation of importing data using our stack. And our stack is composed by the backend layer through that connects to external system, to APIs, and this connection can be made to collect data, but also to send signals to the BMS. So we can trigger actions in order to understand how the energy is used and how the building is used, to modify, to edit some actions and triggers, and make this space more comfortable, more efficient, and more livable for people. And then we have the front end. With the front end, we can expose this data in order to achieve these dashboards and this visualization, which people can use to understand trends, to understand what's happening in the building, and to build strategies. And as I said, of course, we're building dashboard. We want to build dashboards to help end users to understand the data. So now that we answered to all these questions, there is this very important question to me, that is, so what? So now that we collected all this data, what are we going to do? So data by itself is not insightful or actionable. So it's like looking at a piece of the jigsaw and trying to understand the context. This piece is useless. You can understand the context just looking at the box. But what we want to do is to build context and build stories. And these stories put together will just put the jigsaw pieces all together, and we can understand how we can help end user to save energy, but also to make their workplaces and their spaces better. And these steps are energy data collection, energy data preparation, contextualization, correlation of data, which is not just energy data, but it's also occupancy data and other data generated in the building. And then from these steps, we can build actionable data. Now I want to share the current status of our dashboards. And to do so, I want to describe the Azure project, which is made by two phases. Phase one was to collect the data and to build triggers, as I described before, in order to turn the lights off, based on the different conditions. And phase 2 is collecting data to present them in a dashboard and trying to find correlations between energy data, occupancy data, and how people are using the space. So right now we are building these dashboards and we are trying to find this correlation. And phase 2 is still a work in progress. So we are still working on it to enable these dashboards and insights. Back to you, Jeremy.
Thanks for that, Mario. Very in-depth. I'm not even going to begin to try and probe onto some of the things that you spoke about, aside from clarify that your formal qualifications are actually in this space, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So coming from a bit of an authoritative resource, and Mario's been quite instrumental working with myself and the product team to very much steer a lot of our analytics development and how that comes into being. We're obviously looking to work with standards that exist as well. So things like the Local Law 97 in New York in the US. I believe that the UK, Mario, have a similar program, which is a collection of letters, and I'm not going to attempt it.
Yeah, it's called BRAM. Yeah,
that's the one. So we're looking at those kind of benchmarks as well, where not only can we provide you analytics on your actual workspace and how you're consuming energy and how that may correlate to the flow of people and use of resources within those spaces, but also how we can look to formal certification in specific regional areas and look towards those energy efficient goals and benchmarks in those particular spaces. This is also a collaborative journey for us at PlaceOS. Obviously, we're looking at how we can bridge these gaps and being an integration platform, what can we integrate that's going to give us the best output from our dashboards and from the data that we're collecting. As Mario said, just collecting data itself is relatively pointless. It's what we do with that data, in terms of the dashboards and how we can translate that data to be useful. So we're actively looking for things that we can integrate with and products and tools that we can use to obtain the data to provide a more in-depth report on the energy analytics side of things. So that's obviously an invitation to anyone that does have a workplace that has an interest in this side of things, that may have some tools in place already, or likewise from vendors who are working in this space and maybe making energy analytics hardware or software tools or things like that may be able to integrate with PlaceOS as well. So I think that's a full wrap on the three key speakers that we had today. Just to recap, we obviously looked at the new survey feature, which is brand new to the PlaceOS product, and that finds its home in our concierge, which was demonstrated by Julie. We've seen the improvements to our catering and the management of the catering menus, cost coding and catering rules. That's also available via our concierge platform. And we've heard from Mario, who's spoken on the direction that we're moving towards in regards to our energy analytics offering as a part of our broader PlaceOS analytics product offering as well. So I'd like to thank those who have joined us live. Obviously, this will be available to watch after the fact as well. If you do have any questions, of course, please reach out to us either via the website or you can email us direct here at PlaceOS, and we're happy to field any of those questions for you that may come up, or give you a more in-depth demo of some of those new features that we've spoken about today. And hopefully we'll be back with you in the not too distant future looking at some more exciting additions to the PlaceOS platform as we continue to work our way through our roadmap. As always, please feel free to submit roadmap features for our existing users. We're always interested to hear your thoughts on the product and how you use it, and any improvements that you think that we could make as we move along through the journey. So please feel free to submit those or reach out to me directly, and we can have a look at the roadmap together and share some of the stuff that may be coming with you. So once again, thanks to our panelists, Julie, Marvin and Mario today, for taking us through their respective areas. And thank you to those who have joined us this morning and may watch this later. And we'll catch you in the near future. Thank you.